for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, to an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their right.
Unlike
the right that someone has, all our rights exist in context.
What is the context for second medical opinion?
Because of disrespect to the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, to an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their right. Unlike the right that someone has, all our rights exist in context.
What is the context for second medical opinion?
Because of disrespect to the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you see in the group, you're just dealing with African Guyanese issues.
Pleasant Wednesday evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon show. Unfortunately, Leonard Craig is absent without leave. But I have carried this format of the show many times the past 3.5 years. And I have to do it this evening, and I hope I can pull through. But I think I should. There are so many things to discuss in Guyana that I think I can carry an hour, and I have in the past. I don't know, have been on things like that. So I cannot see how the government, the government meant well, but that thing about opening a bank account to get the cash grant, no, that isn't working. And for the members of the government, the president, the vice president, the minister of finance, please take it from me. I've had complaints, several complaints, that the banks have rejected people who tried to open an account. They have put a number of criteria on the people that cannot be met. Like this guy told me plainly, they said, if you don't have a steady income, we can't open an account for you, and it is not required for open an account with somebody who will work tomorrow, will not work tomorrow. Every time I do an article in the newspapers, every time I do a pronouncement on the bank by the Freddie Kissoon show, I get these emails and I get these calls. And isn't it time the society, the government, the ruling party are separate from the government, the opposition parties, all three of them, Forward Guyana, WIN, PNC, civil society groups? Isn't it time they really make this thing an issue? How could I read a publication that says, so get the cash grant, A, B, C, D, and one of it is that you must have a bank account. Well, I think the government has moved away from that. The government position is quite clear, crystal clear. Everybody will get the cash grant, even those who do not have a bank account. And also, I think there is this belief by the government that everybody has a smartphone. I don't have a smartphone. Everybody could register on the computer. There are thousands of people that can't do that. So there should be some facility, some school, some center people go and register with their ID, and later on they produce their ID and collect their check, go and cash it. But I know as night follows day, I will get the feedback from these programs. I I don't understand why. I've been doing this for 10 years. People have been calling me. Now, I got a call from a Guyanese in Bermuda after Craig and I lambasted the banks. And the guy said, Mr. Kissoon, you should see how easy it is to open an account in Bermuda. And so we come back to the Bank of Guyana governor, we come back to the Minister of Finance and the Vice President. Why, if this is not happening outside, why can't somebody stop the banks from creating these hassles? I think unless this program is stopped, or I stop it, I will continue to talk about this banking disaster. And unless I stop writing, I will continue to write about it. It just defies common sense, rationality, logic, that you can't go. The guy told me just to get the bank account, his friend was lending him some money to deposit to open the account. They told him no. I think it was about 20,000. And when he collected the cash grant, he would have paid back his friend. They told him no. And this is not one bank. This is across all the banks that say, you know, you didn't work since high school, how long you left high school. And when you tell them that your big brother sends, they say, no, that can't work. That is not a criterion for opening an account. You have to know where your brother works. You have to get a document. It's a nightmare, and I think people, what is it about it that the finance minister says this doesn't happen in any other country? This don't happen in other countries. This strict, this cruel application of the Money Laundering Act. Why is it happening in Guyana? I really, the first thing I do if I see the Minister of Finance, I don't get around, I stay in my corner. I will ask him if he could elaborate on that as the Finance Minister. He did say every country subscribed to the same Anti-Money Laundering Act, same paragraph, same article, same words. You don't understand why is this hassle in Guyana. But it's also become irrational and illogical that they hassle people outside of the Money Laundering Act. Let me tell you what a childhood friend of mine did. He lived all his life in the UK, all his life. And when he reached 78, he said, I think I had enough of the cold. I want to go back where I came from, live among the Guyanese people until my time is come. And there are hundreds, maybe thousands of people who feel like that from Canada, from Europe, from the United States. Look, I'm now 75, I'm now 82, let me go and spend time where I came from. So this guy returned from London. I mean, he was a school teacher, he has good savings, and the guy, to live monthly, is asking a top London bank to send every month money to Republic Bank in Triumph. And every time the bank sends the money, and he goes to collect his monthly stipend that he pays himself from his savings, he's told that the bank requests the money to come back. So he said, that is my bank, I've been banking it for 30 years. I'm now living in Guyana, I'm asking to send my pension money, my savings. Why would they request to have it back? So he said he contacted his bank. And they said they never requested the public bank to send back the money that the bank sent. And they did it twice. So he went into them and he said, my bank is saying you sent back the money. So after a grand run wrong, they saying to him, can we have some proof that this money is yours? Can we have some proof that this is your saving? This is an international bank operating in London, owned by Europeans, owned by British bankers, British companies for donkey years. And they want to know, where's the is that your savings? No, this cannot happen. This is a violation of people's rights. How can we allow the banks to do this to people? That man spent 40 years outside and just want to come back and live in his land. I tell you, his name is Leonard de Camber. So if you want to know, he lives in up the East Coast. If you good hope. The guy said to me, I said, let's go down to the bank. What is wrong with a bank? Do you know how many people have we migrated to Guyana? When I was living in Hatfield Street, the next door neighbor, an electrician, spent 50 years in London, and he came back to finally settle in Guyana, spend his remaining years. And the guy pension comes from his bank book in London. So what happened to these thousands of Guyanese in the UK, in Canada, in Trinidad, in Barbados, who decided, look, at this age, let me go and spend some time in Guyana, renew my cultural attachment to my country? They can't get the money that they work for in a foreign land. And the thing is, people are going to call me and tell me, man, this been happening to me. But no minister, no opposition leader, no civil society person do not call me. It's like if people don't care. I am telling you, this guy is 78. His name is Leland de Camera, and we've been friends since 18 years of age. And the man's position is simple. I came back, I want to spend my remaining years here. I worked in London for 40 years, and I came back, I settled here, bought a house in Bureau, and I'm happy. But this bank, the money that he has to live with every month, is like it's his salary. How could that be right? How could a country treat its citizen, its senior citizen like that? And this is the opting time. I am saying this on the Freddie Kissoon show, and nobody from the government contacts me and says, look, can you ask Mr. De Camber to come in? And I will send an official of the ministry with him to Republic Bank. Let's find out what is the problem. What problem could it be? My daughter was studying in London, and we sent money for her, and the bank just collected the money, put it in our account. So why is Republic Bank sending back the man money and then tell the man that the sending bank requested it back? And the man contacted his bank, and his bank show him the correspondence where Republic Bank sent the money. But don't let me knock Republic Bank. It's all the banks that's doing it. But since my thought patterns were formed even before I entered UG, I always thought something was wrong with the world and Homo sapiens. I'm in my 70s, and I will never understand the world. I will never understand people. But most of all, I will never understand how we don't strive to make the world a better place. We just believe in that. And it's not making the world a better place and making people better. It's also the animals who are, of course, maybe better than humans. But I will say this thing about what's going on, and then there's another Freddie Kissoon show this year, next year, and nobody will come and say, we talk about this guy, what Republic Bank is doing to him. We will look into it. No one has contacted me on this program for the thousands of complaints we have got during the calling. I know Minister Ben contacted the program when someone said that his vehicle was going above speed limit. He said he was not driving, he was not in that vehicle. But Mr. Bennett never contacted me or the show about so many things we were complaining about. I can't understand why no Ministry of Finance person cannot help these small people that are being pulverized by the bank. I can't understand why no one after the show could contact me and so the camera and the bank and the ministry official could sort it out. But there's going to be another Freddie Kissoon show Friday next week, and somebody will talk about the wrongs that have been done to them. That's it. So let's move on. Let's move on. I've always said on this show and in my daily column that there are certain African Guyanese in African leadership that set about deliberately, most disgustingly and immorally, to fool African Guyanese. And it is important that we confront this deception, because when we confront this deception, we educate people. Do you know this is going to be a little bit hard to say, for this fear of people saying Freddie a boasting, Freddie's a chauvinist. I don't give a rabbit's ass what people have said about me. I went to UG with a rubber slipper that was burst, and I pinned it up. And one person who broadcast that on the show is the current chairman of the Civil Party College and former permanent secretary in education and health, whose son now is the minister of the public service, Haider Ali. He said, 20 years, remember you going to UG with your rubber slipper pin up. Nobody did, take care of me and bought a pair of shoes to me so I could have walked the campus with a pair of shoes. So why should I give, I don't want to swear, why should I give an S about what people think about me? I don't care. So I am going to say something now that it's a bit chauvinistic. I believe my columns, my activism, and the Freddie Kissoon show played a part in two ways. I think I have banged away since 2020 on the qualities of Ali, that I think he's a different Caribbean leader. And I kept banging away at that, and I kept telling people, trust this man, he's not a run-of-the-mill guy. And I would like to think that may influence some people as to how they voted for Ali. And Ali on his own, they got party machinery, they got government done up well for Guyana, but that man won the election on the basis of his substance. Secondly, I think the Freddie Kissoon show and the Chronicle columns have educated people into seeing who the PNC is, into seeing who the AFC is, and that may have caused votes to go over to the PPP and to other opposition parties. So we have to speak on these issues so people could be psychologically equipped to understand their country. So I am going to read a statement David Hines made, and I am going to confront that statement and ask you to dismiss any and everything Hines says because it is fooling you. And be careful of African leadership. They see no interest in you. They see no interest in psychologically and mentally developing you. They see no interest in your psychic integrity. They want to use you. Here is what David Hines said. Tremendous wealth is coming into this country, and because black people are in a terrible state, they are not able to benefit equitably. The fact that black people are not in a state to demand their share means that tomorrow their citizenship is going to be worthless. There is a weakened, fragmented African Guyanese electorate unable to effectively confront and operate in this political framework. Now, there are two parts of that statement. I'm going to read the first part and deal with it. Then I'll deal with the second part. Tremendous wealth is coming into this country, and because black people are in a terrible state, they are not able to benefit equitably. The fact that black people are not in a state to demand their share means that tomorrow their citizenship is going to be worthless. In 2020, just 6 years ago, David Hines and his heroes were in control of Guyana. Who are his heroes? Clive Thomas. Clive Thomas' former friend, they broke up. Their friendship broke up when they were big ones in the Afro-AFC government. I didn't know Clive Thomas' former friend, Professor Maurice Ojo, in his autobiography that was published last year. I didn't know that Clive Thomas was the economic advisor to David Granger. So, David Hines' hero, Clive Thomas, was the economic advisor to the president of Guyana just 6 years ago. Not 16, not 60, not 26, just 6 years ago. Another one of David Hines' heroes, Rupert Rupert, was the Minister of Education. What happened from 2015 to 2020 to African Guyanese that David Hines could write this? Black people are in a terrible state. The fact that black people are not in a state to demand their share means that tomorrow their citizenship is going to be worthless. So you have to explain to these people you're addressing what happened from 2015 to 2020. It needs some force, some mighty force like the United States, like China, some tsunami, something had to come and just devastate African Guyanese in that 5 years. What has come into Guyana to devastate African Guyanese so David Hines could say they are in a terrible state. They're not able to benefit equitably. What has happened to them? Let me answer the question. I don't think anything has happened to them. I don't think anything has happened to Amerindians or Indians. They are poor Indians, they are poor Africans, they are struggling Amerindians. But the past 5-10 years, they have even under the PNC in 2015-2020, there have been perceptible improvement in the overall conditions of Guyanese, and the oil money dispensed by the Urban Ali presidency has made it better. Now, it is all right for Hines to address you as an African Guyanese and say this, but you have to say to him, Mr. Hines, Dr. Hines, you can't just tell us this and think we are fools and idiots and morons. You have to treat us respectfully and tell us how Africans come to be in this place. Just 5 years ago, you guys were in power. What did Clive Thomas do? What did Maurice Odo do? He was in charge of NISL that controls all the assets of Guyana, all the assets of the state. Where did the assets of the state go to? Why did it go to the Guyanese people? I give testimony in a commission by the Granger government on ancestral lands. I testified in front of one of my heroes who was the chairman of the Land Commission, Professor Rudy James. Yes, one of my heroes, very fine human. And what happened to that land? What happened to those lands? What did the commission give it out? David Hines was part of the government of Guyana for 5 years. Here is my problem with African Guyanese, and I appeal to you. When people like Henry Jeffrey, Takuma Ogunse, who's part of the APNU FC government, when they say these things, don't get violent with them. Just ask them for explanations. And if they don't give it, tell them to shut up. So I am going to read the second part of David Hines' statement. This is the part where I hope to open your eyes. This is the part now I am going to stop and speak exclusively to African Guyanese who are looking at this program. Please, if you're not African, please stay with me. But this is for the digestion of African Guyanese. This is what David Hines said. There is a weakened, fragmented African Guyanese electorate unable to effectively confront the political framework of Guyana. Let me read that again, and I'm speaking to you as someone who's been around a long time. I am saying to you this, these people, APNU, the PNC, they are disrespecting you as a great race of the world, the African people. Listen to what I said. There is a weakened, fragmented African Guyanese electorate unable to effectively benefit from the current political framework. Now, let me pause here and ask you something. What do you think is the weakness in that statement? The weakness in that statement which David Hines and none of his asinine, foolish, stupid people that type in and say, yes, Dr. Hines, yes. None of his stupid guests are going to say to him, but if we have a fragmented African Guyanese electorate, how did that come about? The PPP lost the plurality in 2011. The PPP lost the election in 2015. The PNC lost the 2020 election by just 2 seats. Where this historical leviathan, the PNC, how is the African electorate fragmented? Do you want to know who fragmented the African electoral, the Guyanese African electorate? This is where educating people comes in. And this is where these programs, my columns, I will continue to do, because in my heart I know if it doesn't open the eyes of 10,000 people or 5,000 people, it opens the eyes of at least 5 persons. Why is David Hines complaining about the fragmented African Guyanese electorate? Do you know how that fragmentation came about? 1, David Hines himself. David Hines himself preached insanity, madness, tribalism, racially charged stuff that one could not stomach. Not for 1 day. Not for 1 day in a week. Not for 2 days in a fortnight. For 5 days since 2020 until 2026. And people sat down and listened to this man 5 times a week, in which he would say to a woman who was the advisor, the legal advisor, Indian woman, who took her body and soul and mind and legal training and put it at the disposal of the APNU government, and she became the legal advisor to the de facto president of Guyana, Joseph Harmon, Minister of the Presidency. Her name was Gita Chandler. this woman joined the PNC. Someone didn't join the PPP in 2015. Became the legal advisor for the PNC government. And a WPA speaker at the meeting insulted East Indian people, called them out, I mean, really belittled them. And she said, you know, as an East Indian, this is unacceptable. And she responded to the lady. You know what David Hines got up on his program and said? She's a slave catcher. Don't put your mouth in black people business. Do you know how many black people found that to be sickening and said that man is part of APNU, I'm going to vote for APNU? Do you know how many persons of African blood interfaced with that lady when she was legal advisor to Minister Joe Harmon? How many things she probably did for black people in the government? She was very, very well placed. Very well placed. She was very, very up there in the PNC, not up to the PNC leadership. And because the ladies offended at what a black woman said about East Indian persons, David Hines abused her on his program. Now, please tell me if that did not affect the way African Guyanese voted in the 2025 election, in which David Hines spoke at every meeting with the PNC leader, Abu Norton. You know, 4 of my siblings married to African Guyanese. I have African nieces and nephews who named Kissoon. So, just sorry for that. Let me put this one on. Good. Sorry for that. I should have put it on silent. So, what do you think my nieces and nephews will say to that when they hear about what David Hines said? And David Hines is talking about the electoral, the fragmented electorate of African Guyanese. And he is one of the cause. When for 5 years he preached that, people got turned off. And this man is saying, we have a fragmented African Guyanese electorate, and didn't say, I, David Hines, contributed to that. But not only David Hines. David Hines was part of APNU. And when David Hines said that thing about Gita Chandon, nobody came out and said, David, you can't do that. As a member of APNU, as an electoral party, we cannot have our leaders speaking like that. Abu Norton didn't do it. Nobody didn't do it. After the election and the PNC lost, you know, we interviewed Elson Lowe, the former economic advisor to the PNC leader. And he said he spoke to Hines many times about his delivery. But when Hines said that thing about Gita Chandon, nobody from the AFC, nobody from Forward Guyana, nobody said anything. And that is why Forward Guyana didn't even get 5,000 votes to get a seat. Amanza Walton Desert got leftover seats, leftover votes, so she could get a seat. These people so disrespect African people that it is beyond belief that Hines for 5 days could be saying those things. And he laments a fragmented electoral African electorate. Now, that's one reason why African electorate is fragmented. 2, the PNC has been the party of African Guyanese since Jackson and Bonham split, and the PNC was formed in 1957. the PNC have always either controlled the government or have been the major opposition where they just a 1 or 2 seats difference when the people use the government. And that party from 31 seats got 14, got 12. Got 12 in the last elections. Why? Why? Because the banks hassled poor black people from Sophia, and there was no one on the PNC to go and pick at the banks, to meet with the bank manager and say, you can't do this to our people. And so the people in Sophia voted for when? Good. The minibus people can't raise their fare by $100. The speedboat operators can't raise their fare by $100. And you see no PNC leaders saying, well, look, no, this can't be, cost of living have gone up, these people got children. No, those people were left on their own. The Sophia people were left on their own. And guess what the PNC did? That party in itself fragmented the African electorate, because African Guyanese people say, look at these people, look at them, look at them. The people can't raise their bus fare by $100, where are they? The banks making people cry in Sophia, where are they? And guess where they are? Refusing to shake the hand of the president, Aubrey Norton, big stupid man, leader of the opposition in politics 40 years, and refused to shake the hand of one of the most popular presidents in the world. And twice. And the man was so humble, the man said, man, come shake my hands. And all he had to do was say, all right, but you know, I have problems with your leadership, you know. Simple, common sensical thing to do. And Heinz cannot see that those are the things that fragmented the African electorate. Heinz cannot see that. Now look at Campbell. Terence Campbell became part of the PNC leadership running for elections. And he has nothing to talk about except the shape of a minister. And people look at this thing and people say, man, there's so much things to talk about. This guy Terence Campbell talking about the shape and the size of Minister Manichan, and people get turned off of that. When you are a trade union leader and you are associated with the PNC, when you are a church leader and you are associated with the PNC has to say, look, you're close to us, you can't speak things like that. Everybody knows Lincoln Lewis says he's a fighter for black people. Lincoln Lewis referred to me as ugly, and referred to Minister Manichan, then Minister of Education, as ugly. And the PNC and Lincoln Lewis don't see that those things are what fragmented the African electorate. So guess what? A party spoke about the squareheads. Sympathetically, these people almost burned down Guyana on April the 28th last year. Lavish 28 Chinese supermarket. Those people don't get involved in Guyanese politics. And Campbell and Nigel Hughes, an African Guyanese leader, not one Indian, African Guyanese leader went up to Tushin and said, you must understand the square pegs. Those square pegs didn't do no thing at the old. It wasn't no square pegs. It was some bad boys in PPP in college to beat up those Chinese people. I mean, people see that, people say, those are the people we're going to vote for? Are those the people we're going to vote for? So that's 4, I could call much more variables that cause this fragmented electorate. But let me get on to win. I 3 times 3 times. You don't do this thing 1 time. 3 times I went to the CARICOM database and I looked at villages, Leonard, Port Morant, Pleasance, how people voted. Do you know Aubrey Norton and Irfan Ali were billions of miles apart in the election where they lived? Ali lived in Lenora, grew up in Lenora, and got a landslide in Lenora. Aubrey Norton spent, since he came out of Linden, lived in Pleasance. And the PNC lost the win in Pleasance. And they had at the last election rally, this clown, this joker, Henry Jeffrey. So, that tells you where the fragmentation came from. The fragmentation came because African Guyanese said, no, these people belong to the party, we can't vote for these people. And they give Win, a party that was just 3 months old, 16 seats that were lifted, 16 seats that were lifted from the PNC, taken from the PNC, and put those 16 seats into the bosom of a party nobody really knew about. Win. And this guy wants to know about why this guy is talking about fragmented African electorate. Do you know when won in Sapphire? Do you know what Sapphire was to African Guyanese and the PNC prior to 2020? Just like how Port Morant is Jagged land, just like how Lenora is PPP land, Sapphire was PNC land. And a guy, an Indian Muslim guy, and his sister who runs the party, a Muslim Indian clay complexion guy, and her white brother-in-law, they carried on the campaign of Win. Azuddin Mohammed, his sister, and her husband, they were chief cook and water washer for Win. No, big African Guyanese. And African Guyanese gave 16 seats to Win, all over where African Guyanese were concentrated. Win got their votes. There is Georgetown and certain parts where African constituencies are. Irfan Ali carried the votes. So, in fact, the African electorate is fragmented along 3 strands. Part going to Irfan Ali, tiny part remained with the PNC, and the majority went to Win. So, when David Hines next come on the program, and he has Lincoln Lewis, he has Henry Jeffrey, those people are going to insult you again and again. They're not going to say, well, in my last program I talked about how difficult it is for African Guyanese because African Guyanese voting bloc, is disintegrated. And they addressed you on how that disintegration came about. They're not going to do that. David Hines, Henry Jeffrey, Terence Campbell, and all of them, Amanda Walton, all of them, are going to appeal to African Guyanese and not tell them what they need to tell African Guyanese. And what is that? The facts of political reality in Guyana. There is a factual basis as to why the African electorate is fragmented. And nobody from the PNC is going to talk about that. Before I move on, because the operator said we got 5 minutes left. Before I move on, I want to talk about the the win thing. Do you know David Hines, Terence Campbell, Amanzo Walton Reserve, Darwin Best, all of them, all of these people who failed miserably in the election, ignominious failure in the election. Do you know not one of them have ever written on their Facebook page? That includes the lawyer, Dexter Todd, the forensic lawyer Dexter Todd. None of them have ever devoted a paragraph as to why Win won over the PNC supporters. David Hines comes 5 days a week, maybe to 7, and he come on. You see what happened? We are the position now. We're moving tonight. All he comes on and he talks about that, and he provides no answers to what African Guyanese want to know. So he doesn't sit. Terence Campbell doesn't go on his Facebook page. Or Henry Jeffrey say, good evening. Tonight I'd like to be intellectual. I'd like to be academic in my presentation. And I'd like to provide you, African Guyanese, with some answers which I think have been nagging in your mind. And that is how we lost from 31 seats to 12. Why did we lose votes in Plaisance when our leader has lived there for 40 years? And offer a nice scholarly perspective. Do you know that wins people over? When the young African intellectuals could listen to that and say, well, look, at least that's an act of courage and that's an act of decency. And it wins people over. But now he's in his 70s. Now until he reaches old age, David Hines is not going to say that. Henry Jeffrey is in his early 80s. He's not going to tell African Guyanese why Win got 16 seats. And that is the thing you need to do to educate people so people can learn. You have to go to African Guyanese and say, we are fragmented in our voting bloc. And this is how it come about, and maybe we can undo that. And people will listen. One of the things that this country doesn't understand is the importance of an apology. You see, when you get out there, when you said, I'm sorry about that. Looking back at it, I should not have said that. I apologize. I will make this apology, repeat this apology in the future. It pierces my conscience to have said that. When you say those things, do you know you win people over? You win people over because the human has a conscience. I never thought that I would not get sufficient time to discuss other things that I wanted to discuss. And that's because the David Hines thing and this thing about deceiving African people really irritates me. I come from Waterville. I was one of 5 Indians in a school of hundreds. I lived on Dublin Street, Waterville. I was one of 3 Indians that lived on Dublin Street. Incommunicado, I don't know where to find him, but I hope he'll be here next week. We'll have a program on Friday. Thanks for being with me. I did a solo. I hope I achieved some effect. I hope I carried it through. I honestly don't see why I couldn't hold your attention for an hour with all that is going on in Guyana. I will see you on Friday evening, as I normally say. Catch you later. Bye-bye.